Welcome to LabCast, a podcast about the medical laboratory science profession, brought to you by MedLab Convo. To get notified once we drop an episode, you can do well to subscribe to all our social media platforms at MedLab Convo. For questions, feedbacks, and shout-outs, you can do well to send a mail to at medlabconvolabcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Are you a medical lab science student or young professional interested in going beyond traditional career paths? Entrepreneurship might be the answer for you. And the good news is there is an exciting and growing field for MLS business owners. Welcome to another episode of LabCast. I am Obani Confidence Mesoma, your host, and with me here is my amazing co-host, Ghana Samuel. This particular episode is about something that is both interesting and, let's be honest, a little intimidating for a lot of MLS professionals: owning your own medical lab. Whether you are fresh out of school or you're already working, the idea of starting a private lab can feel like a far off, unrealistic dream. There is the capital, the licensing, the equipment, the staffing, and let's not even talk about how to keep the lab profitable. Thankfully, for this special episode, we are joined by a powerhouse in the field, a medical laboratory scientist and businesswoman. She is the founder of Total Healthcare Diagnostics, yes, a fully certified diagnostic lab that is setting standards for quality, and one of the few ISO accredited labs in the area. She'll be taking us behind the scenes of how she built her lab from the ground up. You know, what it took, what she learned, and a lot of in-betweens. MLS Funmilola Mapayi, welcome to LabCast. We're honored to have you and can't wait to unpack your journey as an MLS.
Good evening, MLS Ubani. My name is Dr. Mapayi Funmilola. I'm the MD CEO, the Medical Laboratory Director of Total Healthcare Diagnostics Limited. I just want to give a brief professional trajectory of how the journey has been. Actually, I finished from University of Ibadan. I read biochemistry as my first degree, which I graduated in the year 1999. And after graduation, definitely you know that there will be service and all that and all. After that, I lectured briefly at the Polytechnic of Ibadan. But there was this kind of vacuum that was real inside of me, and I felt that, no, this is not the place to be. So I had to search and look at, okay, what do I do? What can I do even to have a laboratory of my own? And I was able to make inquiries. And at that particular time, there was a program that was on for graduates, associates in medical laboratory science, which I keyed into it. And I was able to go along that line. But it took, I had to resign from my place of work in order for me to focus on my new professional line path. At the end of the day, after that, after the associate, I went for my MSc in chemical pathology, and after which I worked briefly. And after that, I worked for like some years, and I decided to follow my dream, which was having a private lab of my own, which I did. And basically, that was how Total Healthcare came to be. I worked after my master's just for few years, and I started Total Healthcare in the year 2013. That was when we started.
Wow, Ma, just to be clear, from the time you finished your associate program to the time you founded Total Healthcare, how many years did it take?
That was 5 years. I remembered finishing my associate in the year 2007 and starting off my master's at that 2007, finishing 2009. and worked from that 2010 to 2012 and started Total Healthcare. But at that particular, it was not even Total Healthcare, it was Total Care Laboratories, because basically we were into laboratories alone, not with other diagnostics facilities. So it was solely Total Care Laboratories in the year 2013, which was duly registered.
Wow, Ma, it sounds like you've always known that this is what you wanted to do and you went for it. But can I ask, what kind of support system did you have early on? Because I know starting a medical lab is not easy at all. So in terms of partnership, mentorship, funding, was there any kind of support you had earlier on when started, when you bettered this dream?
Okay, thank you very much. For you to follow a path, especially professional path, there should be a kind of focus and insight. And that is like how I always tell people, it's not everybody that can be an entrepreneur. No, we cannot all have labs. You know, there's always a passion that would be in you, that will be a driving force in you for you to achieve your goal. And at that particular time, before I ventured into having the lab of my own, I had quality in place, as in, I was driven by that even before I started working, because I worked, my first place of work as regards laboratory practice was I worked at SpartCare, and I was their head of operations then, at Ibadan, because, I was the head of operation in Ibadan. I went to Lagos for training, came back. We started Part Care in Ibadan. But at that particular time, it was not the vision of Part Care that made me to have the dream of my pursuit, my professional pursuits. I'd already had that long before even going for the course. If going back from what I said, it was a kind of passion that made me to even know, okay, what can I do even to have a lab of my own, which I was able to make inquiries. And at that particular time, it was not until when the program was scrapped, and which I was able to go for. And at that particular time, I had the mind that I would be an entrepreneur, especially in the part of laboratory. And I was not really looking how to just work anywhere. I wanted a place that would give me that, that's, what can I say now, a kind of litter, a kind of a background, that could help me. And that was why, but there's a way God aligned everything. I was able to work in Part Care, and I worked there and everything, that was what happened. And before then, I'd already planned, it's not maybe I didn't get any money from him. It was not loan, but I started little. Definitely, if you have a dream, definitely you must have had some form of savings, before, okay, this is what I want to do, and whole and whole. And actually, the reason why I left Patcare was not because I wanted to, start on my own. The reason why I left was because I wanted, to start my third degree, which was my PhD, and which I was able to, I left Patcare not because I wanted to start my own organization. I left because of my program. But along the line, I discovered that I cannot just be doing the program without, doing anything alongside with it. So what I did was, okay, fine, it's good to have PhD, but at the same time, let me now pursue and that was what happened. That I had to just, okay, while I'm doing my PhD, let me even, follow my dream, pursue that dream that have long, long time, line. And I started that purpose of having a laboratory. Like I said, laboratory, strictly, frankly, laboratory, not with any other diagnostic services attached to it. So I would just say there was no loan anywhere, but I had already saved the little I can save, and I didn't borrow any money to start the business. That's just it. But I'd already planned it, and I start alongside, and that was how Total Care Laboratories came to be. Thank you.
Ma, thank you so much for the wonderful response, ma. I understand that for most businesses, there are two major hurdles that businesses will pass: the first 30 days and the first 90 days. Ma, can you tell me how it was for you, the first 30 days and the first 90 days?
That's an interesting question. Actually, when you for business, for you to have a business, it's not, I won't tell you that it's something that will be smooth. No, definitely you have challenges, you have hurdles and all. And the first 30 days, not even 30 days, I can tell you that for about 3 years, the organization was not even to pay his own salaries, you know, and we couldn't, the organization couldn't pay our own salary rather, you know, but by the support, of, at least I wasn't working. I had to just be, you have to have a kind of synergy in a family, because when you are pursuing a dream, you should ensure that your family, I'm talking about your nuclear family, needs to be, be aware of what you want to do. And that understanding was there. And that was how the support was there till when I think 2016 or 2015, that was when we started, Total Healthcare started paying the bills of salary, the expenses, all that. But for years, it was not really easy. But the reason why it was easy for me was because I had that focus, and I knew that this is what God wants for me. And so, no matter the challenge that I was facing at that particular time, I knew it was just for a time being. And basically, I can explain to you boldly that it has been God all the way. The Bible says it's not by power nor by might, but by the Spirit of God. It has been God, not by my own power, not because I know how to do it, but God has been the sustainer. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. That must have taken a lot of determination. But Ma, let's quickly talk about the planning and the setup phase. Like, what were the key requirements in terms of licenses, equipment, staffing? What did you need to put in place for you to, fully kick off without regulatory pushback?
Thank you. Well, I would just want to say this, there's this part of the scriptures that says that if you are not faithful in another man's business, who will give you your own? So I think it's important that as young professionals, as young scientists, wherever we are, maybe in the process of workplace, fine, it's good for you to have your own organization, to have your own private practice. But like I said, it's not everybody that would have a lab. It's not everybody that will be an entrepreneur. No, but definitely, even that little space that you have, ensure that you do what is right wholeheartedly, not with eye service, because that will alone help you. Even that insight, you won't believe that. Like when I worked in part care, I just want to give a little background at that particular time. It was just a business that started in Ibadan, at that little space. Even though I'm a scientist, I also worked as a marketer, you know. I also worked as an admin person. I didn't tell my employer that, no, you employed me as a scientist and I strictly just focus as a laboratory scientist. But because I saw that vacuum and I knew that it's just a new business and I can't just be requesting, okay, yeah, get this, get this. But I was able to fill in those gaps. At the same time, I was the admin, the accountant, all those. I did it wholeheartedly. And that made it very easy for me when I wanted to start my own, because it's not, like I said, whatever you are doing, if you are faithful in another man's business, definitely God will give you your own. And I think that is a part that I just want to advise young professionals. Number one thing that is important is planning and preparation. You have to plan, you know. Like I said earlier, moving backward, what I said initially, that for you to have a lab, like for myself, it was not because I joined Part Care that vision, that I had that vision. No, it was even before I started the program. I knew that there's a need and I'm going to have a private lab. That was just my own dream at that, not even knowing that I was going to add other investigations like radiology and other value-added services to what I was doing at that particular time. So it's important that you plan and you prepare for it. And how do you plan? You have to develop a comprehensive business plan. Like I said, it's not when you have the business that you have. Like when I started, because of where I was coming from, I employed hematologists, chemical pathologists, all the disciplines, even without not knowing that maybe, I would definitely get money to pay them. But because I was coming from a place that I know the standard that was operative in that particular organization. And at that particular time, I was able to, I got them. But as time goes by, I discovered that I cannot cope with the salaries. So little by little, we had to just adjust and all that. So that's just, so it's important that you plan and you prepare. You know fully well when you start an organization, especially when quality is in place, not just starting and not just doing, but if you're going to put quality in place, it's really challenging. And there's a need for you to even prepare for fund you seek for fund, as in for you to plan and ensure that the funds are there as a little reserve, so that at least when you're having a little challenge, you can easily, okay, let's do it like this and all that before people start knowing you. So it's not something that you just jump at and just, okay, now I'm starting a lab, I should have the profits. The profit may not come in another 3 years. I'm not saying that even 3 years, even 4 years, yes. But what is important is consistency. And we cannot remove the factor of God. So it's important that you plan, you prepare, then you develop a comprehensive business plan. It's in that plan that because even before you can secure a facility, there's a need for you to know, because definitely for Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria, there's a guideline that we have to follow. So it's important that if you want to establish a lab, the first thing is quality. Then you can now look at, okay, the organization that, the regulatory body that would regulate that particular body. Once you identify it, and we know that is a Medical Laboratory Science Council of Nigeria that regulates medical laboratory practice in Nigeria. So what you do is get the guidelines, look at what is required, look at all the things that are required. Is it the space? Is it everything about quality? When you talk about, if you don't have such guidelines, then it will be difficult for you to comply. Now imagine somebody just, okay, let me just get a 2-bedroom flat within a complex, not considering the safety of the people that will be there. It's a different thing if you are going to be a collection center, but when you're talking about analyzing, you have to look at the threat that is going to pose to the people in that particular environment. So it's important that you look at the guidelines, because in the guidelines, you know that microbiology will have to stand on its own, chemical pathology and hematology, all those guidelines. So if you don't have it, so you first of all get the guideline, look at it, okay, what are the things? What do I even need to ensure that I'll have a quality, facility? Because without that, there's no how you can even think about laboratory, because the first thing is about having quality in mind, getting the necessary guideline. Then based on that, you now know that, okay, how do I get the equipment? Because it's also very important for us to consider the facility that we are getting and equipment after you must have gotten the guideline, because based on that, you look at it, okay, what are the things? And even in securing the equipment, you ensure that the equipment that will be purchased or gotten should meet the minimum requirements. Talking about the space, talking about the ventilation, talking about the lighting, even the water supply, and even this waste disposal that I talked about earlier on. So it's important that all these factors must be put into consideration. The facility and equipment, the location, that's even the bedrock first, because it's important that you have space. It's important because there's a way you shouldn't, be a situation where you just, okay, I just want to set up and all that, and you just got maybe parlor, room and parlor apartment. not considering. It's possible if you want to do maybe you just want to, it's not compulsory. Like I would tell people, quality is not only I have to do everything. If it's microbiology that you have competency in, okay, let me just take microbiology, and you are just microbiology lab. You start from there, but ensure that even that microbiology that you are into, all the quality management system are being adhered to. As I'm talking about the procedures, the quality assurance, all those procedures. Make sure that the little that you have, from there you graduate from there like that, till you now get your desired goal. Thank you.
Yes, the breakdown was really insightful because the work we do is very critical. So we can't even afford to have a quality issue. So thank you for that breakdown. But I think there was something we missed earlier when we talked about funding, and you said you were able to save up some money because you already had this dream. But can I ask, what was the estimated startup cost range? Do you still have a figure in mind? Maybe what it took you, the initial money it took to start it. What was it like? What was the capital like?
Well, for that capital, you can't compare when I started with what is obtainable now, because of we all know what is out there now. You can't actually compare that, because there's no figure that I'll mention that will be able to, say, okay, this person started, let's say, even if I say 2 million naira, not even about the figure. There are some things that is just private, it's not something that you can just mention. That will be something, if you want to see me, you see me behind the scene, not something that I would.
Okay, I respect that.
I'll have to,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, ma. Thank you so much, ma. But ma, I would like to ask you this question, and for me, this part is actually very important to me. I want to know, what are the challenges you faced managing a business now, not just being a scientist. What are the challenges you faced?
Wow, a lot, numerous challenges, I would say, numerous, you talk about the cost of equipment, like you said, cost of equipment, and not just getting equipment, but it's also important that you identify vendor that would supply and also maintain the equipment, because it's of no use even if you get a very, very expensive equipment. At the end of the day, the reagents, you don't have regular supply of reagents, the maintenance is not there and all that. And we all know that for you to embrace quality, the bedrock of quality is the 12 quality essentials. And we all know that, your organization, your personnel, your equipment. So those are the things that you have to look at. You have to ensure that you have qualified staffing. The cost of equipment, I would say, was really, really a great challenge. Very, very, expensive. And again, what at that particular, when I started, I was not really, because I'd only worked, coming from a place that already is a very big organization, not just a small lab that at least you are used to big, big equipment and all that. Sourcing the equipment is a problem, getting the supplier, now being able to even identify those equipments that are that are universal, because it's another thing for you to get an equipment that maybe the other laboratorians, they are not used to, they are not using it, and you are just the only one, because that will even affect your EQA if you want to do EQA and all that, because it's good for you to get an equipment that that they can check the performance with other laboratories. So is the cost of equipment is key, and also budget management. you know Creating a realistic budget it was also a challenge. You might have a budget maybe for consumables. At the end of the day, you discover that some, not only consumable, reagents, some may expire because of lack of what? Clients. At the end of the day, maybe you have budgeted that, okay, I'm spending this by so this amount should come out. But at the end of the day, when you have bought everything and nothing, no profit, what will you do? Those are the things, one of the challenge, those are one of the challenges that I had. Then staffing is also another problem, because it's also very important that you have qualified personnel. Very, very important. Because if you don't have qualified personnel, then there's a problem. And even when you have the qualified personnel, retention will also be a problem, especially for those organizations. Maybe you just want to have your facility to be accredited, and in the process, as maybe medical laboratory director, and you have started the training, and along the line, maybe two of your scientists resign. What happens? That means you are starting all over again. So it's a problem. Retaining staff is a major problem when you talk about the challenges that are faced over the years. Then also, what is also like I also explained, basically it's staffing, then your location and space. Like I said earlier, we started as Total Care Laboratories. When we started, it was just maybe like 3 rooms, or like, because of just solely laboratory test. But I knew that that space cannot really be okay. It's not going to meet the test of time. So I just spent a year in that particular location, but looking at what was my dream and all that, I got a bigger space. Not that maybe I have the equipment. Like I will always say, it's not until you have the equipment that, okay, this is it, but you must have that vision. There must be an insight and also focus. What do you want exactly? At the end of the day, even though it was only laboratory, but I got a bigger space where I know that definitely, even there was no x-ray, it was just in that big place. I just managed one like that. But with time, the rooms will be filled. That is just the way of God. That was what I did. Not that maybe all the equipment, like I said. What is important, first of all, plan and prepare. If you are setting up for like 3 bedroom flats or 3 standalone building, just make sure, even if you don't have all the equipment as at that time, because you have quality in mind, then the rooms will be filled over time as you start and all that. So it's not that maybe all the equipment, you just buy all the equipment ones like that. But for laboratory, the basic equipment that definitely that you need a centrifuge, you need microscope, at least those basic equipment, you can start with that, like that, till God helping you. So it's only God that can really help. So that was just my own challenge, the cost of equipment, the location and space. When I discovered that location cannot be sufficient, we relocated after a year to a bigger space, even though we had no equipment in the other rooms, but because there was a vision that all those rooms will be filled. And by the grace of God, the rooms are filled, and even we don't even have space again.
I love the sound of that, Ma. And I especially like how practical your answers are. But some of the challenges you mentioned, to help mitigate them, I've observed that some persons prefer to do a partnership or co-ownership model of business. I'm not really sure what the model total healthcare practices is, if it's like a sole ownership. But what do you think? What's your view on partnerships when it comes to this type of business?
Thank you very much. Currently, I think my own advice is for a business owner to start, you know, at the point of sole ownership. Very, very important, because if you don't understand the business and you're now inviting a partner, I don't know how you want to run that business. That means you will not be the driving force of that business. The investor will push you around. What is important currently is sole proprietary. That's it. That's what it's a sole ownership that we are running. Not We don't have any partners for now. We only have maybe international partners based on some specialized tests that we know is not feasible in Nigeria and all that. So for partnerships, I think is also very important that because you as lab owner, anybody that wants to, it's important that you even know the intricacy of everything that pertains to that business. All the things that pertains to that business, is important that you know it. But by the time it depends, this thing is not a kind of this is the way I have to run it, this is it, and all that. We all have different models. I'm not saying because this is the way, this is the path that I'm running. And like I said, it's also very important to follow your own call. What God is telling you and all that. So it's also very important. But I think when you invite a partner, something that you don't even know, you have not even done, you have not even, for now, what we have, maybe later in future, it's possible if you have other investors that you know that the investors, they are reliable and they are trustworthy, because it's not just getting an investor, it's also very important that you get a trustworthy investor and partners that you can grow together, but notwithstanding, it's also very important that you start the business, know the business, so that when somebody that wants to invest, be able to tell, because the person can even ask you, what's your profit margin, what's your this, and you don't even have answers, you don't even know it, and you just invited them. Before you know it, the partners can even take over the business from you because of your lack of inadequate knowledge of the business. So I think the model is dependent on the owner of the business. That's just, but for now, Total Healthcare Diagnostics, like I said, we were Total Care Laboratories in 2013, but 2016, we changed the name to Total Healthcare Diagnostics because other healthcare facilities were added, like X-ray, sonography, CT scan, other radiological services. So that was the reason why we had to change the name from Total Care Laboratories to Total Healthcare Diagnostics Limited. Thank you.
Okay, Ma. I also want to ask as a follow-up, how can an emerging private lab handle pricing, competition, and make business profitable?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, in business, I think what is important is accessibility. The business should be accessible to people and should also be affordable. And aside that, you won't say because you want the business to be accessible and to be affordable, you now compromise quality. No, but there must be a balance in between affordability and accessibility, because it's also very important, because we know that service to humanity is service to God. And for us, as the medical practitioners and medical laboratorians, we know that we are caregiver, and it's not possible for one to run diagnostic center and believe that, okay, the profit must come now. Fine, the profits will come. But what is important is we have to be client focused. That's the first thing. Like I would always tell people that your number one boss in the organization is your client, not even the MD. Because if they are not happy with you, then definitely the client not happy with you, you'll have people coming to you, and eventually your boss or the MD or the chairman will not be paid. So it's important that we ensure that clients, they are you should be client-centered. We should just focus on the client. But even at the same time, we also have to look at the cost price of what we are getting and also the margin. Then concerning the pricing, there's a general pricing, that's it's published out there, but at the same time, it's good for you not to go below the pricing, but you can go above the pricing based on what you bought, based on the purchase, based on the quality elements that you put in your products. You can't make myself now, if I want to, okay, I have to also look at the pricing for other, centers, but even at the same time, I have to put quality in place. You can't compare my own price with someone that does not, maybe the person is not doing EQA, definitely, how much we spend for EQA, millions and all that, for ensuring that you engage in external quality assurance and system. So if, assessment. So if you want to believe that, okay, because this person is selling maybe PCV, let's say 500 naira, and because of that, you now sell 500 naira, you can go above, you can sell your own at 1.5 based on the cost element of what you have put into your products. So pricing is not something that is stable, but at the same time, you also have to consider the competitive market so that you won't run yourself out of market. But even at the same time, it's not good for you to go below the price, but you can go above it based on your cost elements. You may not have a very large profit margin, but you are sure that at least little you can still replace some of your consumables. And we all know that power infrastructure is even a major problem now, where you know that you don't have regular power supply. So when you're going to run diesel, all those costs, where do you put it? You can't compare yourself maybe when you run diesel from morning till evening with somebody that is just because of the space or because of the line of business or what the capacity of that current, for the mere fact that somebody is just starting and the person is using maybe petrol generator. With time, the person will grow up to that particular, so somebody using diesel and somebody, maybe you are just using petrol and all that, maybe the number of AC. So you can't compare the pricing with what is obtainable. So what is important is consider your cost element, your cost of consumables, and also your staff, because you have to pay salaries too. So those are the things. And like I said, if you are working towards accreditation, then you know that you have to employ qualified personnel so that you can be sure of the accuracy and the reliability of results that is being generated from such a facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ma. Honestly, this has really been eye-opening. And Ma, during the course of your response, you mentioned accreditation. So while we were making our research, one of the things that stood out for us was the fact that there was an ISO accreditation attached to Total Healthcare Limited. And I'm like, wow. The only hospital I know, or the only institution I know that's where I'm based, is an IHVN lab that has this particular kind of accreditation. And so I want to ask Ma, what were the things you needed, or what were the things you had to do that guaranteed you an ISO accreditation, Ma?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a great journey. Like I said, being accredited is not just a day's journey. It's a long time journey. Like I said, it's always very important when you are setting up, ensure that you have quality in place, because there's a need for documentation and also your reporting. Very, very important. How you maintain your documents. So those are the things that are very needed. You can't just wake up in a day and say, okay, I'm getting my accreditation tomorrow. No. There's a place of continuity. There's a place of you maintaining the procedures that you have. I said earlier, when we started Total Care Laboratories, quality was our focus. So, and we started that journey. Like I was in a gathering, and I think I just told the person that, well, I think it's important. Fine, it's good for you to be accredited, but it's also good for you to ensure that you embrace quality management system, practice QMS. Very, very important, because that will also help you to achieve accreditation. Once you have QMS in place, then it will be easier for you to have the accreditation. And like I would always say, we have for indigenous, we know some other labs that are international, maybe partners and all. We are talking about indigenous lab now. By the grace of God, privately owned, not just maybe partners. We know other centers that maybe they have partners outside the country and all that, and they're accredited. But we are talking about indigenous, privately owned. At least we are number one in Oyo State, by the grace of God, not by our own power. So it's very, very important that you follow quality. Like I said, it's not just a day journey. It's not a day's journey. It's also very important that the staff are also carried along. And when you want to do your recruitment, there's a place of training. You have to train and retrain and retrain and retrain and retrain before you can get there. And something happened, I think maybe like 10 years ago. I'm talking about documentation now. Somebody came to us, and that was, we're not even Total, I'm not sure. I think Total Healthcare, yes, we're already in Awushika. I think the person came for a test maybe 2014 or 2016. And already we have documentation in place. We don't just, trash most of it. We have, laboratory information management. We ensure that we record some of those things so that we can have documents, so that anybody that you can just come up and say, okay, your report. So there was a particular court of law in the US that wrote us and said that we should please provide this particular person, we should confirm whether the person came to the facility, for the report, just for them to confirm. They want to know whether they want to deport the client or not, And at that particular time, we had our accreditation in 2020. That particular year that I took, was not, we have not even had our accreditation at that particular time. We were able to produce it. Now imagine if there was no documentation and they would just had to not be able to know whether we were able to produce the report, and we sent it to the court. That in fact these clients came here and this. Now imagine if maybe somebody just use your letterhead and falsify what's it called, reports. How will you defend that? You're not going, there's no how you be able to defend it. But once you have your documentation in place, you can also check and look at, okay, this person, even for 10 years result, you should be able to have the reports. If you are doing QMS, if you are practicing quality management, system. So if you have that, then accreditation will be easy. Then, like you said, like I said, it is a journey. It's not something that will just bounce on you and say, okay, you want to have accreditation tomorrow, you're having it. No, you must start from somewhere. Trainings, you go for capacity building. It's not when you want to have accreditation, it's not that when they are doing seminars, you'll not be there. You'll be there because you want to have new innovative ideas. What are the new things? What are the emerging technologies that you need to, add? You have to really mingle with other professionals that will add to your technical skills. So it's very, very important for the accreditation. Though, like I said, it was a journey. We had that mind that we want to have that, but with the help of God, and because the Bible says faith without work is dead. We had our faith at the same time. We had the work, and God crowned our efforts with the success. But even at that, but there's a new standard that everybody is trying to transit into. But even the 2012, many, like I don't know whether Ubani was in the conference when I said, I think 2020, out of the total 668 laboratories in Africa, I think we had just 6, in the whole of Nigeria at that time, as at 2020 accredited. But when you look at South Africa, they had 420, based on SANAS and based on the bills that was formulated at providers, so that people that maybe laboratory users should ensure that they patronize people with accreditation, and that was why they were able to achieve that. But I tell you, accreditation is not cheap. It's not cheap, but it's always good for you to implement quality management system. From there, you get to that point of accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. In the words of the Apostle Paul, you are fighting the fine fight, and we are so happy that there are professionals out there that care so much about quality, and of course, we are proud of the work that Total Healthcare Limited is doing. So, Ma, in a manner of conclusion, or as a way of conclusion, for aspiring entrepreneur medical laboratory scientists, do you have any advice for them? Maybe what kind of mindset a young MLS should develop if they dream of owning their own lab someday?
Thank you. Like I said at the beginning of the section, um, it's always good for you to be faithful in what you are doing. If currently, maybe as a scientist, you are working in a place, try to be faithful. Put your heart into it, knowing fully well that someday you have your own. And that can only be given by God. Because the Bible says that there's nothing good as nothing good, is given except by the Father of grace. He's the one that gives good gifts. He's the giver of good gifts. It's only there's nothing that we can receive on our own. Any good and perfect gift comes from God. You understand? So, but before then, is when God sees you walking wholeheartedly where you are, then God will know that yes, I think this person will be a good ambassador, to impact lives. It's not just, when you're talking about having an organization or laboratory of your own, it's not about profit making. It's about the lives you're going to impact. If you are working in a place and you feel that, well, let me just do it, let me just collect my salary and go, that's going to be the seed. You are sowing a seed, and in no time, that is what you will reap. But when you have the mind, while you are working, you are looking at it, if this business, if I was the one that owns this business, how do I undo it? How will I do if I'm the owner of this particular business? How do I want, based on that, and you see God connecting you one way or the other, and you have your own, because you have been able to have time of patience and experience, because it's that experience that you have in your workplace that will enable you to do more in your own place. But if you don't have such you don't even know how to manage staff, you don't even know how to impact. Definitely when you have staff, when you employ somebody today, 2 days the person is off, like that. So there's no how. Even if you have all the equipment, it's still going to be human resource that would manage those equipment. So it's very, very, it's still human beings that would handle equipment, not, the equipment will not work on their own, no, they will not work on their own, no, but it's still human resources that you need to work with the equipment. So it's also very important that young professionals out there, let them be committed. Like I also said, it's not everybody that will have a lab. Yes, so it's important that we know our calling, because it's when you know your call that will be able to help you to stand the test of time. To own a facility is not something that is easy. You have lots of challenges. But when you know that this is your call, this is what you have that passion. Even when you are facing challenge, you'll be saying, don't worry. For us, we've not gotten there yet. We are still believing God, We are not there yet. In fact, we are not there. We are not, I would say that we've not gotten there. We are still, still growing. We are still growing. You understand? So it's very, very important for lab owners that are maybe aspiring to have their own organization. Maybe you have it. There's a place of waiting. There's a place of quality. Like I mentioned earlier, it's good for you to be focused and have insight. Okay, this is where I want to do what I want to do. Then again, you should be able to know the mission and the vision of the organization you want. What do you even want to achieve? What is your goal? What is your motto? What is your, the vision and the mission? So those are the things that will propel you, to achieve those things that you set out to have. Then with the help of God, most importantly, the first thing is God. We can't take God out of business. That is it, because he's the one, he said he's going to bless the work of our hands. So without the blessings of God, there's no how we can. So one particular thing is God blessing our work, then we doing our own part, then God will make a way when we do our own part. So my own advice, like I mentioned for earlier, it's important that young professionals, let them be consistent, and let them be let them be content. Yes, because contentment with godliness is great gain. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't have to pursue your goals. No, but at the same time, be patient. learn, have mentors, don't just jump, jump and all that, because it's not good for you to jump into things you don't know. At the end of the day, you now have to what? Run back. And we know, even in the scripture, if you want to build, you have to consider the foundation. Look at foundation is key. So that when you are building, at the end of the day, people will not laugh at you when you cannot even build again. So it's important. The foundation is also very key. Ensure that you have good attitude. There's this thing that I talk about knowledge, skills, and attitude. If you are knowledgeable, if you are skillful, if the attitude is zero, then you are going nowhere. But I tell you, a man with 100% attitude, even without knowledge and skills, over time, you discover that a man with good attitude would be available to learn. And before you know it, in no time, a man with good attitude, we have the skill and also the knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the advice that you've given. If there is one thing I'm taking away from this conversation, it's that owning a medical lab, it's a journey, a long one, in fact, that has to begin with determination and strategic planning. And once again, thank you so much, Ma, for your time. Um, this conversation is a gold mine for every aspiring medical laboratory science entrepreneur, any business person, or just any person that's interested in learning. Because you never can tell when you need the knowledge, or you just never can tell. So thank you for your time. And as much as we hate to end this conversation, it has to come to an end. But um before we go, can we do a little this or that segment? It's not every time that we get to talk to a CEO. So Ma, we want to get like your opinion on like three simple questions, just like a yes or no answer, just what you prefer. So the first thing would be, as CEO slash MD, would you take bench work over administrative work?
I prefer administrative work over bench work.
I don't know why I suspected that was going to be the answer. Okay. Secondly, pay monthly salary or in percentages. I know some lab prefer to pay like percentages of the test they run.
Well, monthly salary is better because it's dependent. Well, I won't say for some, percentage may go well with them, you know, but I think monthly salary would be okay, but though not easy because you have to meet up whether you are making profits, whether you are not making profits. The laborers deserve their what? Their wages. So I would prefer monthly because now imagine, like I told you, some of the hurdles that I had when I started. If the employees were placed on percentage, so I wonder that means. At the end of the month, they won't be going with anything. That's just the plain truth. So what happens? So even because it's just the two-way thing. If you're making profits, fine, but it's dependent on the visionary.
So the last but not the least would be, in this era of social media and branding, would you rather invest in branding or automation? Let's say you have a tight budget. Would you rather invest it in branding or automation?
That's that's a great question. Uh, I would rather invest in branding because not really branding. Can I say the two? Automation in the area of you are talking about the equipment or your facilities that you have. Is it the infrastructure? I need to get the question well. Is it as regards infrastructure or publicity? I think maybe I need you to clarify the question.
Okay, I mean publicity, the image of your brand outside.
You were saying automation and branding. I know the other social stuff was just talking about branding and all. Well, for me, I think automation first, ensuring that you have the necessary equipment. So it's equipment that will pronounce you to have the branding. Although the two, I think the two, they are important, both automation and branding, because even if you automate your system without branding, nobody will know what you are doing, you know. So I think the two, I would go with the two actually, but there might now be, okay, maybe percentage, you can put maybe like 30%, 40%, like that. Maybe you kind of put figures to it, but I think the two would work for me, because if you have automated system without branding, then nobody will know what you're doing. And if you have branding without automation, then what are you publicizing? So that's just my own.
Wow, Ma, thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for pouring into this episode. Thank you for telling us. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for sharing your experiences, Ma. And to our listeners, thank you for sticking with us till this point. And of course, if you have any questions, submissions, or clarifications, you can always do well to reach out to us at medlabconvo labcast@gmail.com and labcast all social media platforms. And until our next episode, see you. Bye.